Hey, this is Justine from the Lake Township Library, and today we're going to be cooking up literature. Before we start cooking anything, make sure that you wash your hands, and if you're younger, make sure you have a parent or an adult to help you with this. So without further ado, we're going to be cooking up literature today by cooking some recipes from the Boxcar Children series. And we'll be starting with Jesse's Simple Stew. So things you'll need for that are potatoes, some baby carrots or some large carrots, beef stew seasoning mix, a bag of pearl onions, or you can use 2 regular onions diced, and some stew meat, or you can just cube up some steaks. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to be washing up our potatoes. This gets all the grime off of it from it sitting at the store and coming from the farms. Just gets all that dirt. We're going to then peel. I sped this up a little bit because it takes forever otherwise. So we're going to peel our potatoes. We peeled 6, but we only used 5 potatoes in this recipe. So if you have larger potatoes like I do, 5 is sufficient. If you have smaller potatoes, I would go 6 or 7. So once this all peeled up, we are going to cut through and dice up our potatoes. Now, we dice them up in about 1-inch cubes. Just make sure that you keep your fingers back. And definitely have an adult help you if you are younger with cutting up anything. Next, we're going to be cutting up the baby carrots. I only used 1 bag. You can also use like the larger carrots and use about 6 of those. Notice how I'm rocking my knife there. It's a lot easier to rock your knife when you cut. Here I decided to get fancy and try and cut 3 at a time. Here I'm sorting through all the meat. Make sure that they're all about the same size so there's an even cooking, so some don't get cooked a lot quicker than others. Now we are going to put the stew mix in 1 cup of hot water and just kind of stir that and whisk it together just to kind of remove some of the clumps. Now that that's all whisked up, we're going to put in our potatoes first. Follow it up with the baby carrots. And then a whole bag of frozen pearl onions. And last but not least, the meat. Now, I personally like to mix everything up a little bit with my hands. I did wash them, but just so there's a little bit more of an even distribution of the food. Now we pour over our seasoning, which it is a little bit clumpy at the end. That's fine. When you stir it to cook it, it balances out. And then you follow up with 3 more cups of hot water.
did end up spreading out a little bit of the seasoning just so it wasn't all one clump. Put the cover on. And begin cooking it on high for about 6 to 7 hours. While that's cooking, let's bake some bread. We're going to start with 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of salt, 2 cups of warm water. Make sure it's not over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to have eventually 5.5 cups to 6 cups of all-purpose flour, and that's all you'll need for this. So we're going to start by combining our dry yeast. Make sure we get all of it. Our sugar. And our salt. Then I like to just stir it up just so it's all evenly balanced and distributed. And this is not a required step, but it's just a thing I like to do. Then we'll add the hot water. And give it a nice stir so the sugar and salt are diluted as well as the dry yeast. And let it sit for about a minute to give time for that yeast to activate. And after it's set for a little bit, I'm going to give it one final stir to make sure everything is okay and there's no clumps. And we'll start adding the flour. Usually add it in about a cup at a time. You can do this in a mixer if you want, like a KitchenAid mixer, but this works just as well. We're going to speed up this process in a little bit. So you just add a cup of flour at a time. So you keep stirring until the edges pull away from the bowl. So we're getting close there. So now we flour our counter to put our dough in. We want to flour our hands just so the dough doesn't stick. I should have done a little bit more there. So you're going to start kneading the bread and flouring as necessary so it doesn't stick to your counter and doesn't stick to your hands. Just keep adding some flour. And then once it's done kneaded, it'll kind of look like a ball like this. You're going to take a bowl and you're going to grease it with some olive oil. And then make sure you coat the entire bowl. Or you're going to place your ball of dough in the bottom, get that greased up, flip it over, and then cover it with a towel and put it in a corner for about an hour to 2 hours. And while that is rising and our stuff's cooking, we're going to make some lemonade. So you will need 8 cups of water, 8 to 10 lemons for juicing, and 1 to 1.5 cups of sugar, depending how sweet you like your lemonade. So the first thing that we're going to do is cut up our lemons and juice them. There's a few different ways that you can juice the lemon. I have a lemon squeezer, which is come in handy on a few different occasions. So if you have the means to invest in something like this, I find it really helpful. Another way that you can juice a lemon is by using a juicer. So it's one of those that you just take the lemon, you stick it middle of it at the top, and then you kind of squeeze down, rotating it, the lemon or lime or whatever, around to get all the juice out of it. And the straining part catches the seeds, so you don't get seeds in your lemon juice. So next, after we have our 2 cups of lemon juice, we're going to put all of our water onto a hot stove and put our 2 cups of lemon juice in it, and then put our sugar, and then stir it up until the sugar seems to be dissolved, and then you wait until it comes to a rapid boil. Every so often, you're going to want to stir it to make sure that nothing is burning at the bottom. So once it comes to rapid boil, we're going to turn our burner down to a low heat and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. After that's done, we're gonna turn off our burner and just let the lemonade cool. So while that's cooling, we're gonna come back to our bread. So if you've noticed, our bread has gained a lot of volume. So we are going to knead it again. Again, don't forget to flour your hands. So we won't need as much kneading this time, just a few rotations. And you're going to cut that in half. And once you have your halves, you can form them in whatever kind of bread shape you want. You can do a circle loaf, or you can make an oblong, more like a French loaf. And then you're going to grease a baking sheet, again making sure that it's covered. Make sure that the loaves are formed the way you want. And you let it sit and rise for about 5 minutes. Once it's risen, you're going to just cut 3 slits in the top of each of them to give them room to expand. I probably should have come a little bit deeper. You're then going to put a baking pan underneath with about 1 inch of water. You're gonna set your oven to 400 degrees. And set a timer for 35 minutes. So while that's baking, it's a perfect opportunity to clean up. I find using an old gift card is a really nice way to get up all that sticky dough and flour off your counter. And now that everything's cleaned up, we can take our bread out of the oven. I like to take some butter and just kind of brush that on top. And there we go. Got some yummy white bread. So to check our stew, I want to poke a fork into some of the veggies to make sure that it can go through with ease. That's how you make sure everything is cooked through. And that is done. That cooked for about 6 hours. And that is the stew. Add salt and pepper to taste. And that's our final meal. And just put the lemonade in a jug and just put it in the fridge, and it should be good for a few days. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep cooking.